Well, hello again sports fans. This is the second flight of my new Ranger with the Matic flight controller. While I did manage to survive the maiden, I wasn't completely happy with the way that the modes were working or the way that the Ranger was flying. I thought it was a bit too tail heavy. So I've moved the CG a bit further forward, but I'm still flying with full rates in manual mode. And I still have a fair bit of left trim on both the aileron and rudder in the transmitter. As far as the flight controller goes, I've changed some of the modes I've been using, and I'll explain those as I go through. But essentially this flight is just about exploring how the modes behave and what level of control I have over the Ranger when it's in them. I'll be flying this flight off the monitor, but I won't be letting the Ranger get too far away until I'm a little bit more confident about how these modes are all working. So I'm launching in manual mode and I'm flying with the 5200 mAh 3S battery that I used in the maiden, and the launch goes pretty well. She's still fairly twitchy, but I can tell straight away that the moving the centre of gravity further forward has improved the handling. So the plan is to take it up to around about 100 metres or so before I start messing around with the flight modes. And the first flight mode I'll be testing is the 3D cruise mode. I got the impression during the maiden that this was providing me with a loiter capability. It seemed to be circling around a point and maintaining altitude, but that turned out not to be the case. After reading the doco, it was apparent that it's supposed to be maintaining a straight course, and that's what I was hoping for today. But as you can see, it's continuing to fly in a circular path, and that path is moving steadily further south due to the substantial wind blowing out of the north. On the positive side, it is maintaining a very stable circular course, and I do have a reasonable level of control over altitude and direction, but not as much as I do in manual mode. So I switch it into standard cruise mode, which I now understand is really a heading hold sort of mode, and just have a bit of a fly around just to see whether it does maintain a heading. But once again, it wants to do left-hand circles all the time. Once again, it does seem to be a fairly stable mode, and it does allow me to change the altitude up and down without any nasty side effects. So apart from that left-hand circling, it seems to be working reasonably well. I've also set up just a straight altitude hold mode, which I switch into now. I'm assuming that it's supposed to maintain a straight course when you let go of the sticks, but just maintain altitude. But once again, it just wants to do left-hand circles, the same as the other modes. So I'm starting to see a trend here. The stability of the modes makes it pretty obvious that it must be something I've done in my setup that's causing this left-hand circling, and I'm suspecting it's the trims that I've entered into the transmitter. So the last mode I'm testing is the return to home mode. I was very disappointed with how it performed on the maiden. It was set to climb to about 200 metres on the way home, and it was struggling to do that, partly because of the throttle settings, but also partly because of the CG being too far back. So I've made some changes to the setting now, and hopefully it will return home at the current altitude and go into a loiter pattern at that altitude with a little bit wider loiter radius. I've also set the bank angle back to the default 20 degrees rather than the 40 degrees I'd entered for the maiden flight. It's gone into loiter mode, and I've highlighted the speed indicator which shows the difference between the downwind speed and the upwind speed. So I'm heading downwind now, and it goes up over 100 kilometres an hour, but as I swing round to the north into the wind, it drops down to about 40 kilometres an hour. So it's performing pretty well in a reasonably strong wind. So I leave it loitering around home for a while, and I have a bit of a play with the throttle just to see how it affects the stability of the loiter pattern. And the INAV doesn't seem to have any trouble at all maintaining it despite my inputs and the wind, so I'm reasonably happy with that. So I figure I've pretty much accomplished everything I came out to the field to do today. I'm pretty certain now that the problems I've been having with the navigation modes are due to the trim settings I've put into the transmitter, and I'll need to go back to the drawing board and do some research on how to trim the plane without stuffing up the flight mode. So I fly around for another 10 minutes or so and redo all the tests and get the same results, and eventually decide it's time to come down and flip it back into manual mode and bring it in for landing. But everything seems to go quite smoothly. The weather forecast for tomorrow is looking pretty good, so with any luck I'll be able to sort out this trim issue overnight and be out again tomorrow with a fully functioning flight controller.